Welcome to the debauchery.
In this episode, we'll be playing Garrett's favorites, Suck It Up, The Torture and Murder of Adrian Jones, and the crime-writing, crime-fighting necrophiliac, Gerard Schaefer.
I'm Dave Jari.
I'm Garrett Quarter.
And this is Criminal as Fuck.
What's good, all you fuckers, debauched, and true crime douchebags out there, and welcome back to another episode of Criminal AF. Once again, I'm Dave Jari, and with me, as always, is my co-host, Garrett Quarter.
How we doing?
Before we get started, we'd like to give a shout-out to our newest members of the debauched, Shay Allen, Kate Goanna, and Jared Rhodes. Thank you all for becoming a part of our fucked up family. A huge shout-out also goes out to all of our loyal listeners and subscribers for bearing with us as we get Studio Chloroform back up and running. It's turned out to be quite the task. What should have only taken a couple weeks has taken double that, as we've had very limited time to get together to rehab the whole room between our 60-hour work weeks and family obligations, but there's light at the end of the tunnel. In the meantime, we'd like to put out a few episodes this week to fill the gap until our next new episode comes out. Today we'll post Garrett's favorite 2 episodes, then my 2 favorite episodes, and some bonus episodes put out by our friends over at Fright Flick FMK and True Crime University. So let's fuck this episode in the mouth with 2 of Garrett's favorite episodes, Suck It Up and the crime-writing, crime-fighting necrophiliac.
All right, so we are going to be talking about a case that I dread talking about. Now, if you've been following us, you know that both Garrett and I, we can't stomach cases that involve children. But for this case, we have to put our big boy pants on. People, sometimes people comment about our banter and why we do, like mail call and Florida Man of the Day. And, sometimes we break away from the story to tell like a side story, which is kind of funny, but, whatever. It's all because of episodes like this. We make an honest effort to lighten up the episodes.
Yeah, I don't care who you are. Nobody wants to sit here, even how, I know a lot of people out there and a lot of listeners are, they love true crime. They're obsessed with it. They watch murder porn all fucking day.
Yeah. They
love a good tragic story, but
yeah, I mean, it
gets fucking we look at these on our days off, and then we come together and then we talk about it. We have to have fun. We're not those type of people that can't just have a good time when we're together.
Right.
So,
I have to be able to somehow be able to turn a switch and not feel, for what these people are going through. And, and the way we look at it is that if we can end each episode where you have, someone has at least smiled, laughed, or related to something that we said, then I think we accomplished something.
Correct.
Because researching and discussing these stories, they can really get inside your head. And, we understand the appeal of getting right into the nuts and bolts of an episode, but to really dive into the pain and horror like these people experience, we believe you have to have some balance between really absorbing the details of the case and also having some semblance of sanity, So we try to break it up. Let's have, fun. Let's talk, let's joke around, blah, blah, blah. All right.
End of the story.
Yeah. So there, I said that. Fight me. I don't care. All right. Now, with this brutal fucking story, I am going to give another disclaimer before we continue. Now, this episode will discuss extensive evidence of the horrific abuse, torture, and murder of a 7-year-old child. We are going to discuss what was done, how long it was done for, and the disgusting and tragic end of this young boy's life. So, if you continue past this point, it's on you. Okay? Just putting it out there.
It's a story that needs to be told too, though. That's what both we were talking about this earlier.
Yeah.
As shitty of a story and a criminal case can go, it needs to, and people need to know about it.
Yeah.
His story, he can't just fade away into
oblivion. Right. Now, and like I was, we talked about before, the reason this case actually drew me in is because there's so many turns and twists and whatnot. There's a lack of action from people in positions of authority. The fact that both his father and stepmother, like when you hear the story, like you cannot believe that they only got 25 years of life. Okay. They are eligible for parole in 25 fucking years. Now, they could one day be walking out in the streets again. And if by telling the story helps keep Adrian's memory alive, you know, for when those two fucking dirtbags fucking come up for parole, then we can put our personal reservations aside and tell the story. So,
yes, sir.
Again, this story contains extreme depictions of abuse and torture of a 7-year-old boy. Discretion is strongly advised. As a parent, you have two main responsibilities. One is to provide your child with basic needs: food, water, shelter, clothing. The second is to provide an environment that is safe and free from physical, sexual, and emotional abuse. A child is dependent on you, as an adult, to provide them with these basic needs. I mean, let's face it. There are good parents and there are bad parents. And for children who have parents that fall in the latter, there are measures in place to ensure that the child is being cared for. And if not, they are placed into a home that can. Or that is what's supposed to happen. On November 25th, 2015, police responded to 5201 North 99th Street in Kansas City, Kansas, for a call of a reported domestic dispute. The alleged victim, Heather Jones, claimed that her husband, Michael Jones, abused her and threatened to shoot her. Michael, who was located nearby, was taken into custody. While investigating the dispute, police spoke with the person who made the 911 call. The person claimed that Heather called them and said that Mike tried to kill her and that her fear was legitimate because she made a comment that implied Mike had already killed before. With this bit of information, Mike was transported to the Detective Bureau and was questioned by Detective Stuart Littlefield after being read his Miranda rights. Mike had confessed to strangling Heather and firing his gun in her direction. Littlefield asked about his children, and Mike stated that he had 6 of them, all daughters, that lived with him. Littlefield then asked if he had any children that didn't live with him, and Mike responded that he had 2 other daughters and a son who lived in Baltimore. When pressed again about other children, Mike said that he had 1 other, a son named AJ. When asked about the location of AJ, Mike said, "He's not with us. He passed away." Mike explained that AJ had behavioral issues, and because of this, he was kept locked in his room, and one day, he found AJ dead. Because Mike was a bondsman, he couldn't get in trouble. So rather than reporting his death, Mike fed AJ's body to the pigs. He then explained that he recovered the bones of his son and placed them in a black plastic tub, which was still located in the small barn where the pigs were housed. Concurrently, Heather was interviewed by the initial responding detective, Brad Lancaster. During the interview, Heather became emotional and told Detective Lancaster that she had information that would put her husband, Mike Jones, away for life. She explained that there was a 7-year-old boy who was no longer, quote, in the mix, and that her husband killed him, fed his body to the pigs, and disposed of his remains. She claimed that she never saw what Mike had done with the body and stated that Mike initially told her that he brought AJ to the hospital. All of this, as we will learn, was a lie. And Heather's emotional breakdown, describing how Mike had killed little AJ, was all played out without a single tear running down her face. A planned charade to distance herself from her husband and the pure evil which was about to be exposed. An evil that put Heather smack dab in the middle of this young boy's torturous demise. The proof, captured in photographs and on over 30 security cameras placed throughout the house and perimeter. Even Heather implicated herself in the abuse of 7-year-old Adrian Jones through a Facebook group she administered, boasting about years of neglect and torture, beginning when Adrian was just 3 years old. Surely, if someone were to have witnessed such abuse, they would report it, and the appropriate authorities would intervene and ensure that the boy was placed in a loving and caring home, free of abuse and neglect. Sadly, Adrian's abuse was reported numerous times and well documented in 2 different states over nearly a 5-year period. Yet time and again, the services that were put in place to protect children like Adrian failed him over and over and over. Ultimately, as Adrian's maternal family will contest, led to his death. So many opportunities were missed to save this baby's life. How did we get to this point? What led to years of Adrian's torture? Let's take a look into the short life of a 7-year-old boy who had dreams of one day becoming a football player. Adrian Jones was born in 2008 to Michael Jones and Deanna Pierce. Now, people covering this story, and we'll throw ourselves in there as well, like already failed this boy because nobody could get his fucking birth date set. So some have it as September, some have it as May. I've seen it in June. Several sites even have his birth as 2002. Okay. Do the fucking math. 2002 would put him at like fucking a lot older than 7 years old in 2015. Okay, so I don't know where the fuck you got 2002 from. But anyway.
And that sets this episode up so much too. The fact that we don't even have a birthday for this kid shows that how insignificant he was, right, in the grand scheme of things.
Mm-hmm. But from what I can make out of all of this is the date of May 15th, 2008. Which seems to be mathematically correct. It puts him at 7 years old in 2015. For all intents and purposes, I've read that Deanna was a loving and caring mother to Adrian and her 2 other children until Mike had cheated and left her for another woman. This woman actually turned out to be one of the subjects of this story, Heather. After the split, Deanna kind of went down a dark path. She began drinking, doing drugs. She would stay out all hours of the night, sometimes not even coming home until the next day. All the while, the children were home alone. And I think at this point, Adrian's like 1-2 years old. So the home would become an endless turnstile of men in and out of their lives. Okay, for the next year or 2.
Always a red flag.
Yeah. So Deanna would eventually find a man who was willing to stick it out with her and support her and the children, which seems wonderful. Things seem to be okay now. Things kind of going back in the fold and whatnot. Until it was discovered that this man was sexually abusing her kids. So he's out. Okay. Now Deanna starts spiraling out of control again, and this led to numerous reports of child endangerment and abandonment. In September of 2011, Adrian and his 2 siblings were removed from the home after an investigation confirmed that the children were endangered and left alone for extended periods of time, with Adrian wearing soiled diapers the entire time she was gone with no food or water. Deanna's mother, Judy Conway, petitioned for custody of the children. She was granted custody of the 2 girls, but Mike came forward, and since he was Adrian's biological father, he was granted full custody, despite Judy's attempts to keep the children together. All right, so now within 3 months of 2-year-old Adrian moving in with his father in December of 2011, the Kansas DCF workers began receiving phone calls regarding the well-being of the children. Okay, so they go from one parent who is not up to parent skills, and now going to another parent who's similar. These calls stated that the father, Mike, had guns laying all around the house, and the stepmom, Heather, was observed to be high on drugs around the children. More calls came in saying that the children appeared to be malnourished and had observable physical injuries. Further investigations were conducted, which claims that Heather would hit her stepchildren. Only her stepchildren, not her own children.
Yeah.
Stepchildren.
I mean, you see that
all
across
the time.
all the time.
Yeah. Mike also had biological daughters living there at the time as well. And Heather she was reported to be hitting these children with objects and closed fists, quote unquote. The social worker determined that the claims were unsubstantiated.
That this is going to be a trend, obviously, in this episode.
Yes.
DCF does a lot of good.
They do.
They do a lot of good.
I personally know people who work
Correct.
in DCF. Yeah.
There's some good DCF social workers. But they don't. I don't know if it's lack of funding, lack of support. They have a lot of cases and certain things that they can't touch.
Yeah.
But I also know a lot of police officers too that like actual accounted stories that they've told to me and stuff like that. And I've heard a lot that police kind of they don't get along with DCF a lot. They're the ones going to those calls where DCF get called, and they get upset because a lot of people get their kids taken when they don't deserve it.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people that deserve to get their kids taken
and they don't. Right.
So, and they're there. The police officers are there on their worst day. They see the house in the way it's not, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
When you give
shit happens.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they see it in its raw element where a DCF worker gives a 2-day notice before they show up.
Yeah.
And they come in, gives them time to hide stuff, clean up, do things like that. So the system is broken. I feel like it's so I'm not trying to attack DCF workers in general, but I think it needs to be looked at as a whole because we hear these stories all the time. Gabriel Fernandez, Adrian Jones. The list goes on and on.
Yep. And just knowing, like I said, I know people who work in DCF and whatnot. There's a lot of fucking legal red tape.
Yeah. Oh no, for sure. It takes a lot for the government to take a child from a household. It does take a lot.
And just by and this is like one case right here is like when we're looking at this particular case, the grandmother, the maternal grandmother, was like, "Give me all the children.
Yeah,
just give them to me. I got this." You know what I mean? But because Mike was the biological father, he has first dibs, which is understandable.
Yeah.
But when the person who has first dibs is a fucking shit stain,
you
might want to fucking put that on
exactly like you said, though, red tape.
Yeah. So
unfortunately, that's what it is.
Yep. All right. So even though they determined that the claims were unsubstantiated, they did note in the file that Adrian had noticeable bruising on his face and had a black eye at 3 years old. But yet the claims are unsubstantiated. All right. It is also reported that Heather's biological son is removed from the home at this time. Now, it's important to remember this aspect because this will come up later. Okay. A Kansas Social Services report states that although Mike uses physical force on the children as well, it does not rise to the level of abuse by Heather. Okay, so she's definitely the one that has something going on. You know what I mean? And you know, we really don't go into it much, you know, in our notes here, but you know, I mean, there's claims that Heather was basically running a fucking meth factory out of her fucking house, selling drugs, doing all sort of kind of shit. So I mean, she's just a shady fucking character, and to be perfectly honest, so is fucking Mike. You know,
I mean, they're pretty much confirmed career criminals,
right?
So
yeah. So Mike tells DCF that he and Heather are splitting up, and she will no longer have contact with the children. Now, with this safety plan in place, which was which was basically a promissory note, stating that Heather is not to be around the children, they remained in the custody of Mike. Okay, so I mean, I'm sure if anybody who's really heard this story before, the term pinky promise has been thrown around. This is basically a pinky promise,
especially when you're trying to pinky promise on a relationship.
Yeah.
People do stupid stuff,
right?
When they're trying to get back with their ex. I mean,
yep. So,
everyone can relate, or has seen it, or had somebody that they know.
Yeah. So this was basically a pinky promise between Mike and DCF that Heather was no longer going to be around the children. Okay, and we'll find out that that's not the case. All right. Unbeknownst to DCF in Kansas, that Mike and Heather actually reunited shortly after. Okay, there you go. And it wasn't discovered by the state until 2013 when a report was filed claiming that Adrian was not receiving proper medical care. All right. Once this claim was filed and started to be investigated, the family upped and moved to Missouri. So nothing was ever done about that. But it didn't take long for the Missouri DCF to become familiar with Adrian Jones. In 2013, after claims of physical abuse, Adrian, at just 5 years old, admitted in an interview with a Missouri social worker and a police officer that his father would kick him in the head, and sometimes he would feel bones sticking out. Okay. This is a 5-year-old telling a social worker and a police officer, my father kicks me in the head, and sometimes I feel bones sticking out. He admitted Mike would punch him in the stomach as well, as Heather would pull his ears just to hurt him. Adrian continued to tell her, hold on. Dude, this is fucked. All right. So Adrian continued to tell the social worker that his daddy and mommy wouldn't give him any food. So after not noticing any observable bruising, the social worker marked Adrian as high risk, but safe, and simply told Mike and Heather to remove the lock from his room, and Adrian was returned home. High risk, but safe.
Dude.
You're going to hear that a lot.
Oh, that's so unfortunate.
All right, so basically Adrian was at high risk of physical, emotional, and or sexual abuse, but was safe at the time of the investigation. Okay. Dude, this is going to be fucking rough, and I apologize ahead of time. But, all right. So, February of 2014, Mike told a social worker that he was at his wit's end when it came to parenting Adrian. And he suggested that he would probably be better off in state's care. The social worker,
voluntary surrender at the end of the day.
Correct, yes.
That's like...
Yep. Listen, I bit off more than I can chew.
But honestly, if you look back, you have a record across state lines of multiple calls, multiple problems, home visits where there was a fucking lock on the door to his room, right? And then now the father, the one who got primary care, tells you he can't do this anymore.
Yeah.
And obviously keep going to the story. It's just
So the social worker told Mike, if you do that, you'll be arrested for child abandonment.
Correct.
And because Mike was a bondsman at the time, if you're not familiar with a bondsman, they need to carry weapons. you know, they're kind of like the shady.
They're definitely shady. I'll always say that. They're just as shady. Bad as the people sitting in the courthouse waiting to go into criminal trial. 100%. Yeah. Bondsmen are,
but for some reason they're legally you know, they're.
Dude, every bondsman you see, like if you get a speeding ticket, expect like, and you just see them over there, like scalping, basically. It's crazy.
Dog the bounty hunter.
Yeah. they're hoping. They're hoping.
Yep. All right. So because he was a bondsman, he couldn't risk being arrested. So they kept custody of Adrian and he returned home. He remained in the home. 1 month later, DCF was contacted by a psychiatric hospital saying Adrian was dropped off by his parents days ago and they haven't checked in on him, nor can they make contact with them. So basically, they did exactly what they're going to do. They dropped him off at some hospital. The hospital staff told the social worker that Adrian is an easygoing kid and doesn't exhibit any behavioral problems, as his parents had explained. So they speculate that the real issue is actually his parents, and his demeanor changes when Adrian is with them. When Mike and Heather were finally reached, Heather said they'll take the abandonment charge. We're not picking him up. Okay. Which would have been a fucking godsend.
Dude.
Yeah.
Now, see, that's where I was saying the system needs to change earlier in this conversation, because I feel like there's a lot of parents that are overwhelmed and can't do it and handle the situation wrong. They're afraid to get charged, so they don't.
And
they don't have the child's best interest at heart because they're more afraid to go to jail for child abandonment.
Right.
Now, granted, I don't think they shouldn't. I'm with it. They should be charged for child. That's child abandonment for sure. By definition, that's child abandonment.
And the ultimate goal for like social services, I would believe, is to try to keep the family dynamic intact.
Correct. I'm sure that's probably
goal.
their whatever their mission statement.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right.
But it's one of those things where it's like it's kind of a gray line where it's like
there has to be underlying circumstances where you'd be like, you know what? Yeah, you're right. You don't deserve this kid. Yeah. And we're taking him. All right. So
to save a child's life, I think.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Maybe we can drop the child abandonment charge.
Right. So the social worker convinces Mike and Heather to pick up Adrian, and they do, and he remains in the home. The ruling of this claim was that Adrian was high risk, but safe. In October of 2014, a report comes into DCF that Adrian has been witnessed eating out of a garbage can. After an investigation, Adrian again was marked as high risk, but safe. Shortly after this claim, the family moves back to Kansas into the rented home in Kansas City, which would soon become Adrian's death site. It was here that both Mike and Heather's abuse would escalate, with Adrian receiving the majority of the torture. We can't even call it abuse anymore, because what happens from here on out is nothing but disgusting, horrific torture of a child. Now, we mentioned earlier that Heather had her own Facebook group. The group was called Fuck Everybody Else, or Fuck Everyone Else. So here people would gripe about whatever was pissing them off. It sounds like any fucking community fucking Facebook group. Yeah. That's why what's that thing that was going around there, like, oh, try that in a small town or whatever. I'm like, we're from a small town. If you hear the fucking people griping in the fucking Facebook group, yeah, you know exactly what the fuck it is. But anyway, yeah, that's a little. This is the side stuff that we we need this little laugh for this one. But anyway. All right, bringing it back. So here people would gripe about whatever was pissing them off, and Heather's gripes pretty much only consisted of her bitching and complaining about Adrian. A post was made by Heather on December 24th, 2014. It stated, "I have a psychopath I'm giving away for free. He broke out last night." All right, that alone just fucking like, what?
He broke out last night.
He broke out last night.
Poor kid had to eat out of the trash because he was, dude, that honestly, out of all, like, the thought of not feeding your child in starvation is so
Yeah.
Like maniacal, dude.
Basic fucking need. It's
the
a
fact
basic.
that a kid would just be starving and just asking for food.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Oh man, that's crazy.
When there's food available,
that's just feed your fucking man, dude.
Yep. All right. So he broke out last night and fucked my kitchen up and everything I had baked. I'm beyond pissed. And now he's running laps around my pool and doing push-ups until I get tired. Unless someone wants to come take him. Okay. She immediately
what a great Facebook group, by the way.
Yeah. Yep. Oh, yeah.
It sounds. I can see the threads going right now.
Yeah. She immediately follows
world-class citizens here in this.
Yeah. She immediately follows that post with, "I can't shoot him, unfortunately, but I can work the shit out of him until I feel better."
Jesus Christ.
So this is 2014. Adrian's 6 years old. Okay. The following day, on Christmas, mind you, she posts, "I'm so beyond done with this kid. Last night, he chased me with a fucking kitchen knife, trying to stab me, until I jumped the counter, in pain and all, and tackled his ass."
Damn, man.
Are you sure y'all don't want him? I'll pay child support. Okay.
If only could he got to, if he could have got to him, man.
Fucking stab that fucking bitch. Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
You fucking rooting for this kid to fucking just knife her. All right.
He'd still be alive.
Yeah. All right. So she continues. "Seriously, he's for real a psychopath. I'm not even kidding. Every day with this child is like being a guard in a prison yard. His bio mom fucked this kid up. Like, seriously, he kills everything he comes in contact with."
I'm so confused. Which, at this point, they're living together for how long? The bio mom has been out of the picture since he was 2?
Yeah.
Right?
2 or 3. Yeah.
2 or 3?
Yep.
How did the biological mother fuck a 2 or 3-year-old's mind up?
To where now? Yeah.
Stop.
Right.
Stop.
Yeah.
You sound crazy.
Mm-hmm. And
you fuck this kid's mind up.
And the thing is, like, occasionally throughout this time, I really didn't touch much on it, but occasionally the kids were allowed to see the biological mother and the grandmother and whatnot, and supervised visits and everything. And social workers at the time would say that Adrian would just perk up.
Yeah, because it was probably his only light.
Right. So regardless of what the mother did before and the horrible thing, child abandonment, it's inexcusable. But he wasn't fucking tortured or abused.
Correct.
You know what I mean?
Correct.
So whatever.
Obviously, too, is people don't know that he was all the children in that house were homeschooled. Too.
Right.
So I feel like school is probably one of the places that kids get a break from. If they're being abused at home or whatever, they probably like going to school.
Yeah.
They probably enjoy that little 8-hour gap where.
Yeah. And not only that, people can see them.
Also, people also are on the lookout for them, and teachers will call.
Oh yeah.
So it's
they're required. What is it called? A required reporter or something.
Yeah.
Like if they even suspect it, they are required by law to report it.
And it's shitty too, because you know that his parents knew this.
Yeah.
And that's why they decided to homeschool their children, which.
All right, so just to go back just a little bit to catch up, his bio mom fucked this kid up. Like, seriously, he kills everything he comes in contact with. So another user chimes in. She's like, "Is this the push-up kid? Laugh my fucking ass off from your security camera?" When I was like, what the fuck is that? So she's sharing security footage of Adrian being punished, abused, tortured on this Facebook group.
Yeah. Do you think they were making him do the push-ups? You know what I mean? From watching a Ring camera, seeing a kid do push-ups in the yard, you're like, this kid's crazy or whatever. Yeah. Maybe they were forcing him to do push-ups. You never know. It could have been part of the abuse.
No, it was 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so like just another user. So this all comes from like a warrant that I came across that another person, another human being, can say is that the push-up kid. Laugh my fucking ass off.
Oh, you gotta love.
You know what I mean?
You gotta love social media, dude.
Yep. So then another user posted, "Merry Christmas, but I can't take him. I have no problems pulling a Carol and have him look at the flowers."
What the fuck?
So for those that don't know, this is a reference from season 4, episode 14 of The Walking Dead. The episode was called The Grove, and where this was where one of the main characters, Carol, tells a young girl who
just got bit. Yes, yeah. I remember this.
Who has?
Oh my god!
Well, no. The little girl ended up killing her sister.
Yeah,
just because she's fucking crazy. So Carol takes this little girl out into like a field and tells the girl to look at the flowers. And then Carol shoots the girl in the back of the head. Okay. So Heather replies to this comment, "Look at the flowers. Yeah, I'm about to pull that shit." Okay. Now, the posts continue at length with Heather making comments such as, "Pain compliance doesn't work. I've tried leather belts and that shit don't work. I cuff his little ass and he unhinged a pair of my police-issued handcuffs. Scared to look at my phone," implying this security cameras. "Afraid I might have to feed some pigs a body." This is in December 28th, 2014. Okay. Again.
Holy shit.
This is going to lead into something. All right.
This is on social media. This is in a fucking small town Facebook group.
Yep. So during the time of these Facebook posts, Mike and Heather began to document the torture of Adrian, sharing photos between each other. Okay, so you think in a healthy family dynamic, the husband and wife, like, "Oh, here's little Bobby at his soccer match. Let me share pictures with you." Okay?
Yeah.
This family dynamic between Mike and Heather is, "I just punched your fucking 6-year-old kid in the face. Look at this fucking black eye I just gave him. Ha 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 ha, laugh, laugh, laugh." And then the father, Mike, would do the same, sending fucking pictures to him.
And then there's that one-up thing going on too.
Yes.
Oh, what a sadistic.
Yep. These are two grown-ass fucking adults, a biological father, documenting, sharing, laughing, about torture of a fucking child. Okay. All right. So the disturbing images, which they can be found on Google if you so choose to look, includes photos.
I wouldn't recommend it.
No, don't. Includes photos of Adrian duct taped to an inversion table with his arms restrained above his head. Another photo shows severe swelling and bruising around his ankles and elbows from being held upside down and restrained on the inversion table overnight. Okay. Now, again, I'm going to remind you, these are not photos from a DCF investigation. Yep. These are photos taken by Adrian's own father, fucking Shitty McShitstain.
Shitty McStain.
And his stepmother, Cunty McCuntface.
Because that's honestly.
Yeah. All right. So we got Shitty McShitstain and
Cunty McCuntface.
And Cunty McCuntface. Okay. So there's a photo of Adrian with cutting boards placed on his chest and back and held in place with bandages while his fingers are forced, spread apart, all in the effort to cause major discomfort. And he was left in these positions for hours on end.
You know what the amazing part about this is the resilience of children. That kids are resilient as shit.
They are.
When you don't experience like life and like the troubles of just being an adult and going through, like when that's all you know and that's what you were bred into, the fact that he was able to just go through this is mind blowing. It just goes to show you that I feel like the best way I feel like anybody listening and all that stuff, nobody makes it through childhood unscathed.
Correct.
There's always something. Some sort of trauma, some sort of everything. And I think that really resonates to who you are, who you become as a person later on in life.
Yes.
And I think that I don't know, maybe it's the way that you're designed. I think like if you look in nature, right? Like how usually babies get picked off like it's something bred into people to make children as resilient as they are. And that's why
it's a survival. It's survival
correct.
mode.
Yeah, it's
you have to.
In a modern society with outstanding parents, like I said, regardless, it doesn't matter if you've had both your two loving parents that love you immensely, who stayed together their whole life, who did this. It doesn't matter. There's some sort of trauma. Now the levels of it vary, but it'll stick with you to forever.
Oh yeah. No, I 100% agree because I came from an extremely stable
same
household.
For sure.
You know, my parents were fucking amazing. Very Ozzie and Harriet. I don't know if you're familiar with that term. Like 50s, you know, upbringing, whatever. And, you know, I've have trauma from my childhood.
Yeah, of course. Everybody does.
Right.
That's what I mean. You don't come through unscathed. It's just different levels. And it just goes to show how resilient children are. Yeah. It really is. Because this kid, at this point, has nobody looking out for his interests, who's trapped and who probably... There's still... all I'm saying is there's probably still shining moments into this kid's life where he's happy. Even in the shit, for sure.
Yeah. So there's another photo of Adrian, and he has a large, bloody, gaping wound going down the side of his face.
Fuck.
The accompanying video shows that he was stabbed in the side of the face with a broken broom handle, either by his father or an uncle who was staying with them during this time and was witness to all of this torture. It was one of those two. Probably
so we're bringing the family into...
Yeah.
Fuck, man.
Mm-hmm. So as we stated, there was constant video surveillance throughout the home documenting Adrian's 24-hour torture. He was forced to stay outside all night in cold temperatures with tiki torches duct taped to his hands. And he would have to do laps around the pool with these tiki torches all night long. If he stopped, sat, laid down, he would face further.
What do you think the threshold is for a punishment at this point? At this point, it doesn't matter. It's something so minuscule. I have a 6-year-old son right now.
Yes.
They can be annoying, for sure.
Oh, yeah.
But it doesn't justify the punishment. That's the thing that blows my mind about this whole case. I want to know the details. I want to know what justified each punishment and the severity of it.
I'm going to tell you.
Ugh. Keep going.
Okay. And it comes down to one single defining moment. And, well, we'll go into it. All right, so he was forced to walk around in cold temperatures all night with tiki torches duct taped to his hands. There's video of Adrian standing outside on a cold night with nothing but a t-shirt and shorts, with his hands handcuffed behind his back, with what appears to be a small container of applesauce on the ground in front of him. Apparently, this was his meal for the day. Adrian kneels down. 60
calories.
Yeah. Adrian kneels down on the ground and leans over and picks up the bowl with his teeth. He tilts his head back, hoping that whatever applesauce that's in there will slide into his mouth. Meanwhile, while this is happening, you can hear Heather in the background telling one of her daughters that there's dirt and bugs in the applesauce. And then she laughs. There's further photos of Adrian. He's standing neck deep in a disgusting, dirty green pool in the middle of the night. Once again, forced outside. By now, you can begin to see that Adrian, who was once a full-bodied, healthy, vibrant 3-year-old, when he came into the care of fucking McShitstain and cunt face, is now an emaciated shell of his former self. Literal skin and bones.
Yeah, there's also a picture of him at this point online too that will make you definitely think.
Because Adrian kept escaping his locked room to sneak food, Mike rigged a cell, like a prison cell, in the stand-up shower stall. securing a large sheet of plywood to the wall and trapping Adrian inside.
So basic survival at this point.
Yeah.
The kid's just trying to get something to eat.
Yep. So he's basically in a shower stall, so I'm sure everybody's seen like what a stand-up shower stall looks like. It's not very big. I mean, I know if I took a shower right now, I'd be fucking banging my elbows into the fucking wall and shit, But yeah, so they basically put up a huge sheet of plywood, fucking bolted it to the wall. He was only allowed out so many times a day, if at all. Yeah. Basically, this was his living space, a shower stall. It was inside this makeshift prison cell that Adrian would experience some of his worst torture. The other children of the home would later report that they would hear Heather going into the shower stall and begin beating Adrian for no reason. There were times the children would hear Heather strangling Adrian to near death. One time the children thought he was actually dead, and Heather had to resuscitate him. All right. So
shit, at that point, I would have just took the death.
Yeah. This next example of torture, I can't even fathom. And this one's going to be extremely tough to get through. I'm just going to put that right in front of, put that up right in front. So this torture, it involved a handheld high voltage taser. Both fucking McShitstain and fucking O'Cuntface would repeatedly tase Adrian, whether for punishment or for fun, for their own sick, twisted pleasure. There's a lot more to this. So there's a particular way that tasers work, and to do it the way that's made to work is it's meant for direct contact.
Yeah, I've been tased before.
Yeah, direct contact to the skin, to the body, wherever. And with that, it sends a jolt of electricity through the body. If used for self-defense, it's a good way to temporarily disable an attacker or whatever. Now, this is where it gets fucking dark. When you hold the taser about an inch away from the body, the electricity from the taser, it arcs. Mm-hmm. Okay? So it doesn't send a jolt as intended. What it does, it creates a scalding hot,
it's a burn,
lightning bolt, basically, that fries your fucking skin. Okay? This is how fucking cunty fucking bitch face would tase Adrian. So I know what you're thinking. Oh my God, a jolt of hot lightning frying the skin must be excruciatingly painful. And you would be right. But Cunty didn't just give Adrian a jolt. She held it an inch over his skin, creating an arc of electricity. Okay. So this wasn't a quick zap. It wasn't a few seconds. She did this for 20 seconds at a time, several times, repeated. For days and weeks on it.
3rd-degree burns.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And the sadistic, like, they ordered it from Amazon with the intention to use it on this child too. You know what I mean? That's almost even crazier. Where it's like, and it was showed off. It was like, hey, look what I got.
Yeah.
That's the worst part about this whole thing.
Yep.
It was all they didn't. You don't just get a taser.
Just to get a
taser.
Right.
It was completely all motivated to just torture this poor child.
Give this child the most intense, excruciating pain possible.
And 3rd-degree burns from a taser are not fun.
No. Nope. All right, so we're going to take this a step further. So I'm going to show you exactly what 20 seconds would sound like if you were an evil, disgusting excuse of a trashy scumbag fucking cunt. And I want you to picture poor Adrian on the other end, screaming his lungs out as his skin and muscle is literally frying to the fucking bone. All right, so he endured this excruciating pain until both his fucking shit-stained father and fucking cunt stepmother got tired of seeing him, hearing him, feeding him whatever scraps they could sporadically feed him. And they nailed the plywood to the wall, sealing 7-year-old Adrian in his cell, which eventually became his coffin. So less than a week before Adrian's death, Heather is taking a selfie of her new haircut to show her friends on Facebook. She's using the mirror in the bathroom that contained Adrian's sealed prison. You can see the plywood bolted to the wall outside of the shower stall, and she's freely showing this and sharing this on Facebook. Inside this shower stall is Adrian. He's wallowing in a week's worth of his own shit and piss, starving, dehydrated, injured, burned,
probably infected.
Yeah, he hasn't been given food or water in a week, at least. And you can hear over the camera audio the struggling voice of little Adrian crying out, "I'm gonna die."
You got this. Keep going.
Yeah.
You got this.
And her response to him, "Suck it up."
Oh, man.
This was the last anyone heard from Adrian. He died sometime shortly after. Nobody knows when. He stayed bolted inside that shower stall for weeks until Mike and Heather could no longer stand the stench of his decomposing body. So they contacted a local farmer and they purchased 6 feeding pigs. And they let them starve for a few days before Mike and allegedly the uncle carried what remained of Adrian's body to the pigsty.
It's the calculation that annoys the fuck out of me.
Yeah.
These two were so calculated with everything. Even down to starving the pigs. Like, it just...
Yeah. And they just stood there and watched the starving pigs rip apart Adrian's flesh. And when the last bit of meat was gone, Mike placed Adrian's bones inside a plastic storage bin. Now, I said we'd go back and talk about why all of this occurred. And it goes back to within a few weeks of Adrian being sent to his father and Heather. We talked about the first claim where DCF showed up to the house and for reports of abuse and whatnot, and they witnessed Adrian's black eye and all that kind of shit. Well, Heather had a biological son, and he was taken. She blamed a fucking 3-year-old.
Yeah.
He was the reason why her son was taken, and from here on out, you are going to be my worst fucking enemy. This is why this all fucking happened. Because she was a fucking shitty mother to her own fucking child and had him taken away. And rather than facing the fact that you're a fucking piece of shit, you blame a 3-year-old.
Yeah. That's almost the most fucked up thing out of this whole story.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
that you can't even take responsibility for your own fucking sick, twisted actions, that you blame a 3-year-old child. How?
Yep. Who was just answering a question of a social service. You know?
Yeah.
Do you guys get hit? Yeah. Did he get hit? Yeah. You know? Well, what's a 3-year-old going to say? You know what I mean? I don't think 3-year-olds know how to lie.
No, dude.
You know what I mean? They don't know how to.
They don't know how to lie. They don't know how. They don't. You can condition a 3-year-old as much as you want.
Yeah. Yep.
They're going to be honest.
Yeah, it's like when you go to like amusement park or something,
dude,
and you're like, you must be 5 years old to ride this ride. Yeah, hey, you're gonna be 5, okay?
A 6-year-old, you can't condition.
I know.
A 7-year-old,
yeah,
Adrian's age,
yep,
you can't condition. They're still gonna walk up to a cashier and be like, "Wow, mommy, why is she so big?"
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, oh my fucking god,
like, shut up.
Like, they're still their own.
They're gonna speak the fucking truth. They're gonna, yep.
Oh,
and
man.
all of this was because of that. So.
There's evil in this world. You know, we deal with it a lot on this podcast. We do a lot of research.
Yeah.
And there's a special place. Listen, you know me. I'm not a big religious guy, but there's a special place in hell.
Oh, yeah.
And hopefully that 25 years, hopefully within that 25 years, somebody finds her. Mm-hmm. Somebody finds him, too.
Yeah.
He's responsible, too. That's your own flesh and blood, dude.
Yep. So, they're both charged and convicted and sentenced to 25 years of life. And right now they're rotting, but they still have the possibility.
With the possibility of parole. That's the big key.
Yep. So when their 25 years comes up, I pray to God there's somebody standing in that courtroom or in that parole hearing or whatever. And there's somebody there to speak for him, to speak for Adrian, because they should never, ever, ever fucking see the light of day again. Yeah. Ever. And if there was fucking a death penalty for fucking child abuse, fucking burn them all.
The crazy thing about this story is I can smell the house. I can see, like, I can see the vivid, like, details. That's what gets me too. And I don't get how, like I said, I don't want to shit on DCF workers and social workers and stuff like that. Yeah. But how do you enter a situation like that and say, yeah, he's safe? Yeah. He's safe.
He's high risk, but he's safe.
But he's safe.
At this particular fucking second, he's safe. Yeah. Yep.
You have to put the blame on someone, and obviously the ultimate blame is the parents, obviously, and the stepmom. But God, guys,
there's
God damn
checks and balances in place to make this, to avoid this situation, and it just seems like every step of the way, Adrian was failed.
Yeah,
every single fucking step of the way.
Yeah, he had.
So. All right, so in 2017, Adrian's paternal grandmother, Judy Conway, and his biological mother, Deanna, they filed a civil suit against the Kansas State Department of Child and Families and employees of the Missouri Department of Social Services, as well as 2 other social service organizations whose employees had contact with Adrian before his death. The case alleged that through a series of hotline calls and investigations, social workers in Kansas and Missouri knew the extent of abuse Adrian had suffered and ultimately could have prevented his death, but failed to do so. Stating in the lawsuit, unlike many other abused and neglected children whose abuse occurs under the veil of darkness and secrecy, Adrian's mistreatment was a repeated subject of a seamlessly endless series of reports and hotline calls to social service workers and social service agencies in both Kansas and Missouri, and they were asking for $25 million in damages. The case made it to the Missouri Supreme Court in 2019 after Judge Charles McKenzie declined to grant the Kansas defendant's motion to dismiss. The Missouri Supreme Court sent back the case to Judge McKenzie, referencing a 2019 U.S. Supreme Court case regarding whether a state could be brought into another court in another state. And in this case, that would be Kansas being judged in a Missouri court.
Now, see, this is going to be controversial, but I don't give a fuck about that.
I don't give a fuck about that either.
Nobody was there for that fucking child. Yeah. Nobody deserves to profit off of it.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
nobody who was trying to sue, they were never there for him.
Right.
They never tried to stop it. Fuck you. So I don't care.
Yeah.
I don't care. Good for Missouri for saying fuck you. Good for the state. Like good. Yeah. I'm glad that nobody profited off of this fucking sick, twisted thing. Because Adrian should have been the only one to profit off of that.
Right. In December of 2020, the plaintiffs, the grandmother and mother, dismissed the case against the two undisclosed social services agencies after a confidential settlement had been reached. So not Kansas or Missouri. It's the two private social service organizations. In January of 2021, Judge McKenzie ruled that the plaintiffs, the mother and the grandmother, did not adequately plead a breach of ministerial duty and did not make clear which clerical steps they alleged Missouri DSS employees failed to take in Adrian's case.
He's completely right. They didn't care. They didn't care. Yep. They would see him once a whatever in a blue moon.
Whatever, yeah.
Like, no, fuck you.
Yeah.
Stop trying to profit off of. You should have been there from the beginning. Somebody would have actually reached out, tried to help that boy. I don't care.
100%.
You would have been as actively in this child's life.
Yep.
You wouldn't have got a fucking monthly, yearly visit, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Fuck you.
Yep. So Judge McKenzie, he dismissed the defendants from the case. So the Missouri case is closed. Kaput. Nothing's coming out of that. I believe the Kansas state is still kind of.
I swear to God, if they fucking get anyone, if they win.
Yeah. So in normal people terms, which is me, the judge threw out the case as having no merit. Okay. If there is any light that shines on this story, it is that in May of 2021, Adrian's law was signed by the governor of Kansas. The law mandates that children alleged to be victims of abuse or neglect need to be visually observed by an employee of the Department of Children and Families or a representative of the law enforcement agency investigating the report. Both Kansas.
We're a little fucking late.
Bro.
We're a little late.
Oh, yeah. So both Kansas.
You would think if we're doing a home visit.
Yeah.
Jesus fucking
Both
Christ.
Kansas DCF and law enforcement must interact with the child during joint investigations. This is what totally fucks with my head in this situation. It took until 2021 to pass into law what should have been fucking common sense.
From the beginning of the conception of the agency.
Yeah. You have to visually see the child.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Shit. I guarantee you, though. I guarantee you. Listen, I don't want to talk shit on, but on underfunded states like Kansas, Mississippi, like you know what I mean, Arkansas. I guarantee you, the state that we live in, they're going to visually see. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
They're gonna if DCF comes to your house, those kids better be there.
Yep.
It's just how laws were made, how things were, you know what I mean?
Absolutely. Yep.
So I guess it goes all state by state.
Yeah.
And I know there's a federal child protective services, but they don't deal with things as like that the state does.
Yeah. Yep.
At the state level, basically.
2021. This was not a fucking law prior to 2021. That just fucking blows my mind.
Holy shit.
Blows my fucking mind.
I think the most horrible thing, having kids, you raise kids, anybody who has kids out there, anyone who's given a child a life and like seen a kid experience something new and be excited about the littlest things that you take for granted. And that actually makes you appreciate those little things again. You know what I mean? Yeah. Everybody knows that when you have kids. Adrian never experienced a normal life. He never got, like you said, the abuse started at 3 years old, probably earlier. He never understood what the real world was like. And the fact that I can't comprehend that somebody would take that away from an expanding mind, a growing mind.
Yeah.
Just going to the fucking park and having a good day. That is the saddest thing about this whole thing. That's the thing I can't wrap my head around.
Yeah.
little life experiences.
Right.
The joy of riding a bike down a road.
Yeah.
The joy of going swimming in not being tortured in a pool. The joy, like little things. This 6-year-old kid never experienced a happy moment in his life, and he still stuck it out till 7 years old.
Yeah.
Blows my mind. That's why I was going back to the resilience of this kid and resilience in children in general, and how they can brush off abuse like it's nothing.
Right.
So that's my closing argument. Just, never, I hope, like you said, when this trial goes in 25 years and he's up for parole, I hope they get a judge who just
says, fuck you.
Fuck you, bud.
Yep. All right, so I'm going to close this story out. And I'd like to add this portion of a statement from Detective Littlefield, who is one of the detectives in the case. And he read this at the sentencing of Mike Jones. And he says, I have asked seasoned law enforcement officers if they remember Ted Bundy, John Wayne Gacy, Jeffrey Dahmer, and of course, they all said yes. And he then asked them, do you remember at least one of their victims? And they all said no. He continues to say, the problem with society is we remember the criminals, but not their victims. I am begging you, please remember Adrian.
Oh, I love that.
He was 7 years old. He was tortured and beaten and starved to death. He was left to rot in a shower that ultimately became his coffin. And when his parents could no longer stand the stench, what was left of his little body was fed to pigs. And that's something that in 25 years, or was it 20 years now? Like, they need to fucking remember that shit, Like, this is, you did this to a 7-year-old child. Who the fuck does that?
Yeah, that's a what a fucking powerful statement. I wish I was in the courtroom to hear that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely. All right. So that'll do it for this episode of Suck It Up.
Oh, what a fucking shitty name for an episode. But it's so well.
Yeah.
Good job, David.
Well, that was a rough reminder of that episode. That was a tough one. Next up for Garrett's favorites is the crime writing, crime fighting, necrophiliac, Gerard Schaefer. Many crime authors write made-up stories from the dark depths of their imagination, while some authors write fantastical stories based on real criminal events, and others tell the true, detailed stories of a crime with factual evidence from court records. One author wrote his stories with a different approach. Unknown to his readers, he was the one actually committing the crimes, and he did not spare a single gruesome detail. Gerard Schaefer's stories were marketed as fiction. However, in hindsight, some believe his stories were the truth about how he killed a number of his alleged victims. The true crime author was the true criminal. A lot of true crime writing lacks authenticity. The protagonist is a voyeur in their own story. The authors are usually good people who can boast that they've not done anything worse than accidentally run a red light. The main problem with criminals is that they're typically too compulsive and uneducated to lend an articulate voice to their crimes. Gerard Schaefer masqueraded his nauseating graphic murder tales as fiction. He was convicted of 2 murders, suspected by authorities of more than 24, and frequently boasted that his death toll was higher than 80. The sufferers in all of his plots were women, and his stories were used as evidence to prove his level of culpability, with titles like Flies in Her Eyes, Whores, What to Do About 'Em, and Blonde on a Stick. His stories were based off of murders he committed, but the exact wording can't be placed to exact crimes. His published books, Killer Fiction and Beyond Killer Fiction, gave the idea that these were real accounts from the actual murderer. They were all real, no matter how much the names and places had been changed. He continued his writing behind bars, Some stories that he wrote were true accounts, while others were part of his dark fantasies. In one of his stories, simply titled Whores, he reminisces about hanging a prostitute and having sex with her corpse. In another story named Spring Break, he tells the story of fatally stabbing and disemboweling a co-ed during sex. Which of these are real and which are fiction? It's hard to tell with a mind as dark as Schaefer's. What made Schaefer this way? Was he always this dark soul, wanting and needing to kill? Gerard Schaefer was born on March 25th, 1946, in Wisconsin, and then raised in Atlanta, Georgia. He was the first child of three to Gerard John Schaefer Sr. and Doris Marie Runcie. His family permanently relocated to Florida in 1960. Schaefer described his childhood as troubled and turbulent, mostly because of his family's frequent relocations. His father was also an alcoholic and was often verbally abusive to his wife and children. His father's frequent absences also made Gerard Jr. weary of his father, and he also felt that his father liked his sister more, and the constant belittling cemented those thoughts. This made it so Gerard became closer with his mother, and Doris was extremely protective of her children. When Schaefer was a child, he preferred outdoor activities. This love of the outdoors turned into an interest in nature, and he collected guns and loved to hunt and fish. These activities he would share with his father when he was home and not being abusive. Gerard wasn't really a loner growing up, but his classmates would say that he was not part of any clique. He would often pursue his interests alone, and he was viewed as an outdoorsman, and they believed he would become a forest ranger. When Schaefer was just 12, he would tie himself to a tree and, quote, "I'd get excited sexually and do something to hurt myself." The violent self-loathing went back to his earliest childhood games. In these games, he says, "I always got killed. I wanted to die. My father favored my sister, so I wanted to be a girl. I was such a disappointment to my family. To my father, he loved my sister. I couldn't please my father, so in playing games, I always wanted to be killed." By the time Schaefer was a teen, he had developed erotic fantasies of hurting women who he thought were worthy of his contempt. These fantasies evolved into sadomasochism and bondage. He would always wear women's underwear until he reached orgasm via autoerotic asphyxiation. These fantasies would increase in terms of frequency and intensity with time, gradually dominating many of his waking hours. Schaefer also became a peeping Tom in his mid-teens and developed the habit of cross-dressing. His female classmates viewed him with disdain. Barbara Krolik, a former classmate, later recalled, "I can't remember him being friends with any of the guys. He was always on the outside looking in. As a matter of fact, the only thing I really remember is that I always had to tuck my skirt under my legs because he would practically stand on his head to look up a girl's skirt." Although his social life was not very social, his teachers would call him a promising student. He was a member of the varsity football team during his sophomore and junior years, and he is known to have been an excellent golfer. When he graduated from St. Thomas Aquinas High School in June of 1964, he briefly worked as a fishing guide in the Everglades before enrolling at Broward Community College. While at Broward, he started as a social studies major, but in September of 1964, he switched to teaching. Upon completion of his sophomore year at Broward, he applied for and was accepted for a scholarship at Florida Atlantic University in Boca Raton, where he began his studies in 1968 with aspirations to obtain a Bachelor of Arts in Education. In December of 1968, Schaefer married his fiancée, Martha Louise Fogg, a fellow FAU student. She was 2 years younger than him, and they had met at Broward. Their relationship soon soured, both due to Schaefer's incessant demands for sex and his spending much of his free time hunting. Gerard and Martha divorced on May 2nd, 1970. She cited his extreme cruelty as the reason for their separation. Gerard worked as a teacher for a time. He was not successful in this. He was hard-headed and didn't accept advice from his superiors and co-workers. He was also underqualified and had very limited knowledge on the subject he taught. He was only a teacher for a little over a year. His next endeavor was becoming a police officer. He started as a security guard with the Wackenhut Corporation. But on September 1st, 1970, he applied for a vacancy within the Wilton Manors Police Department. He did not disclose that he had twice been fired from teaching positions and falsely claimed to have acquired 2 years of experience as a research assistant at FAU. They did not verify his work history, and he was formally inducted into the Broward County Police Department in September of 1971. He graduated as a patrolman at the end of the year at the age of 25. While Schaefer was still working as a security guard in 1971, he met a 19-year-old secretary named Teresa Dean. They married in September of that year. This marriage was more harmonious because Teresa gave in to his demands for sex, and she also shared his passion for fishing in locations such as the Florida Keys. Schaefer only lasted 6 months at the Wilton Manors Police Department. His performance was considered poor, although he did receive accommodation from his superiors in March of 1972 for his actions during a raid on a drug house. He was dismissed from his position when his superiors discovered his habit of stopping cars driven by females who committed minor traffic infractions. He would enter the license plate numbers into a database to obtain personal details about them before contacting them to request dates. Our writer police officer wasn't as slick as he may have thought. He was overconfident in his position as an officer. On July 21st, 1972, Schaefer encountered 2 teenage hitchhikers named Nancy Ellen Trotter and Paula Sue Wells, aged 18 and 17 respectively. He drove the 2 girls to their destination while scolding them about the dangers of hitchhiking. Once he learned that neither girl was native to Florida and that the 2 were intending to travel to Jensen Beach, Schaefer proposed to drive them there himself. The girls accepted the offer and agreed to meet him at a bandstand on East Ocean Boulevard at 9:15 a.m. The next morning, Schaefer met up with the girls as agreed upon. He was not wearing his uniform, and he was driving his own car. Despite these facts, he told the girls he was still on duty. He told them he was undercover and driving an unmarked car. Not long after departing, Schaefer deviated from their intended route. He told them he wanted to show them an old Spanish fort. He also continued to lecture the girls about hitchhiking and accepting rides from random strangers, and told them that they could be sold into white slavery. He finally ended up stopping by a dilapidated shed deep inside a remote forest, where he handcuffed and gagged the girls. He took one of the girls to a large cypress tree close to the Indian River. He tied her legs to the trunk just below her knees before binding a noose around her neck. The other end of the rope was tied to a branch in such a manner as to force her to stand on the exposed roots to counter the pressure from the noose. Schaefer then took the other girl to another tree, where she was bound in a similar manner. Both girls were told that he was going to rape and kill them. Just at that moment, Schaefer received an urgent radio dispatch, telling him to report back to the police station immediately. He had no choice but to leave the girls bound and gagged while he had responded to the call. He threatened both girls that he would soon return and that he was to confer with the individual that he was intending to sell them to. The girls, of course, escaped. When Schaefer returned to the forest almost 2 hours later, he made the discovery of their escape. Panicked, he immediately returned home and called his station, where he spoke to Sheriff Robert Crowder. He told the sheriff, "I've done something very foolish. You'll be mad at me." Schaefer then downplayed what he had done and explained that he was trying to teach the girls a lesson on the risks of hitchhiking, but that he overdid the job. He then explained that he had abandoned the girls in the swampland near Hutchinson Island,
not far from the Indian River. The sheriff and Lieutenant Melvin Waldron immediately proceeded to Florida State Road A1A, where they discovered a desperate, partially gagged teenage girl with her hands tied behind her back, swimming via a flutter kick in a river. As the officers slowed to a halt, they observed the distraught girl clamber from the riverbank with sections of her jeans and blouse shredded, attempting to get their attention. They removed the gag from the girl's mouth, and she identified herself as Nancy and told them that her friend was somewhere in the forest. It was brought to her attention that her friend had escaped the forest and flagged down a truck driver and was already brought to the station 45 minutes earlier. Both girls told the story of how Schaefer abducted them, tied them up, and left them. They explained how they escaped and how they had to carefully loosen the rope because one slip and they would have been hanged. Schaefer, of course, repeated his innocence and that he was trying to teach them a lesson, but his story was not believed. He was dismissed from the force and placed under arrest for false imprisonment and aggravated assault. While out on bail, he returned to the house that he and his second wife had rented. His wife and in-laws reported no change in his demeanor, meaning that they really believed that he was trying to teach them a lesson. Then, on September 27th, 1972, Schaefer struck again. He abducted two teenage friends named Susan Carol Place, age 17, and Georgia Marie Jessup, age 16. The three of them were attending an adult education center in Fort Lauderdale, and that's where they met. He told the girls that he went by the name of Jerry, and that he was from Colorado. He said he intended to return there after a trip to Mexico. He feigned interest in the reincarnation in ESP, which Jessup was interested in. He was trying to integrate himself with both the girls and gain their trust. On the afternoon of their disappearance, Susan's mother, Lucille, arrived home to find her daughter straightening her room, as Georgia sat upon a chair in the bedroom. Both girls introduced Lucille to a man in his 20s, whom they referred to as Jerry. Susan told her mother that she intended to travel to Fort Lauderdale with Jerry to go to the beach and play guitar. Lucille was a bit suspicious, but Jerry assured her his intentions were innocent. And even though Jerry had calmed her nerves a little, she still made note of his vehicle, a 1969 Datsun. Susan told her mother that she would be gone just for a little while, but she would remain in contact with her. The girls and Jerry left the home at 8:45 p.m. When Susan had not returned after 4 days, Lucille first contacted George's mother, Shirley, only to learn that her daughter had run away on September 27th. Because of this, the girls were reported missing to the Oakland Park Police. Lucille provided the vehicle registration and a physical description of this man named Jerry. The registration was traced to a St. Petersburg resident who did not resemble Jerry Shepherd, and they had a firm alibi for the date of the girl's disappearance. The only Jerry Shepherd registered as living in Fort Lauderdale was also eliminated by police inquiries, and by early 1973, the teenager's disappearance had largely become a cold case. Mary Alice Briscolina, 14, and Elsie Lena Farmer, 13, vanished while hitchhiking to a commercial boulevard restaurant from a Lauderdale-by-the-Sea motel in October 26, 1972, less than 1 month after Susan and Georgia were last seen alive. Their bodies were separately recovered in undergrowth close to Sunrise Boulevard early the following year. Both girls' legs were spread apart. Mary Alice had been beaten about the head, with one fatal blow recorded. Many of her fingernails had been torn from her body, implying a hard fight against her killer. Elsie had been bludgeoned to death. The police questioned Mary's friends, and it was revealed that the girls would often visit a Lauderdale-by-the-Sea apartment rented by the older sister of Mary's boyfriend, and that an individual by the name of Gary Shepherd had been known to Mary. 3 months later,
Colette Marie Goodenough, and Barbara Ann Wilcox, both 19, disappeared while hitchhiking from Sioux City, Iowa to Florida. Both were last seen alive in Biloxi, Mississippi. Their disappearance occurred while Schaefer remained free prior to the beginning of his sentence for the abduction of Trotter and Wells. Their skeletal remains were discovered scattered close to a large tree in an orange crate in January of 1977. Both victims had been bound together with baling wire, and impressions on the tree branches indicated that one or both victims had been suspended from the tree as their murderer sat or stood upon the orange crate. In March of 1973, Lucille Place discovered a letter written by Jerry Shepard in her daughter's bedroom. She drove to the return address that appeared on the letter, 333 Martin Avenue in Stuart, Florida, only to learn from the building manager that Jerry Shepard had registered at the property under his real name, Gerard Schaefer. Lucille also revisited the car registration that she had provided to the police. She realized that she assumed the car was registered in Pinellas County rather than Martin County. Having the police run the plate from Martin County, it was found that the car was registered as a blue-green Datsun that happened to be registered to Gerard Schaefer, who resided at 333 Martin Avenue. A father and son were searching for discarded aluminum cans and discovered extensively decomposed remains of two individuals scattered around a hole dug among trees in Old Hammock Park in Port St. Lucie, Florida. Deep scratch marks were evident upon the base of the tree, close to where sections of a torso had been bound to the base of a trunk. One victim wore the remnants of blue jeans with a circular emblem of the Roadrunner. The other body was completely nude, with a pile of clothes laying nearby in the undergrowth. The location of this discovery was 6 miles from where Trotter and Wells had been held captive prior to their escape the previous summer. Both girls had been bound and murdered, and their spinal cords were severed at the lumbar and cervical section, and several bones were completely severed with a knife or machete. Their heads had been decapitated after death, and their jawbones sustained numerous fractures. One set of remains, later identified as Susan Place, had also sustained a gunshot wound to her lower jaw consistent with a .22 caliber pistol. There was evidence to show that both bodies were suspended from the tree, and the initials GJ had been carved into the tree trunk. Inside a locked bedroom at the Fort Lauderdale residence of Schaefer's mother, police found 300 pages of lurid stories, some including crude drawings Schaefer had penned and typed over the course of several years. These stories detailed the kidnapping, humiliation, rape, and execution by hanging of a number of teenage girls and young women whom he routinely referred to as whores, sluts, and harlots, including two named Belinda and Carmen, and an unidentified woman who he graphically describes hanging at an unknown location close to Powerline Road. The following story I will read was in Schaefer's possession when he was brought in for questioning. This story is extremely graphic. Listener discretion is advised. She was expecting dinner, but instead was driven down a deserted road. She was asked to get out of the car and submitted to a frisk search. Then the handcuffs were locked around her wrists and the blindfold placed over her eyes. She was then led away into the dark to the place of execution. She was assisted in mounting the ladder and sat down on top of it. The hangman's noose was placed over her head after a pillowcase was dropped over her face in a hood arrangement. She sat there very composed and ladylike while I adjusted the rope. She obviously had no inclination of what was about to happen. I told her some stories about Vietnam and then told her I had to make a radio call. I warned her that if she made a sound, that she would be hanged immediately. I went back to the car and had something to drink. I got out and tied the rope to the bumper so that if I pulled away, it would pull out the ladder from beneath her and she would be left hanging. I went back to see her and asked if she was comfortable. She replied that she was getting bored and would I please hurry up with whatever business I had to attend to.
I said I would, and before I went back to the car, I made sure that the rope was tight around her neck. She sat there very ladylike in a black chiffon dress with her hair done up and black pantyhose and high heels. She was wearing perfume and was very sexy. I went back to the car and finished off the bottle of wine, and then promptly at 9 p.m., I started the car and backed up quickly. I turned off the car and got out, straining to see if the branches were moving in the trees or if there were any other sounds. There were none. After 15 minutes, which I judged to be a sufficient time for her to die, I went slowly forward into the grave of trees where the execution site was arranged. It was nothing more than a rope with a hangman's noose over a limb, dangling above the ladder where she was to sit. I had a light, but I almost didn't want to see what I was responsible for. I approached in the dark and could make out her body turning slowly, suspended from the tree. I went forward and turned the light. I was a little shocked. There was a considerable amount of blood staining the white pillowcase hood that was over her head. The noose was pulled tight around her neck, and her head was tilted to the side, because I had placed the noose beneath her left chin. When I was within a few feet of her body, I could see that where her feet had been tied tightly, that she had broken the bounds obviously in her violent death throes. One of her high heels was kicked off. I was probably shaking as I slowly ran my hand up under her dress just above her knees and began to work upward. I felt a big hard growing in my pants as my hand traveled up her legs, still warm and very much alive to me. The inside of her thighs were wet where she had urinated in her panties. Her underpants and pantyhose were soaked. She was wearing her pantyhose over her panties that were white nylon mesh and very skimpy. I lifted her dress in her wet slip and pulled down the pantyhose over the back of her backside, just leaving her panties. I slipped my fingers beneath the rim of her panties down near the front of her cunt and moved then slowly back towards her asshole, fully expecting and hoping to find a nice pile of shit. My fingers found the hair of her ass and inched towards her hole. Her hole was open, and my finger easily slipped into her hot rectum. There was a small amount of excrement littering the crotch of her panties and more clinging to the area around her asshole, but there was not nearly as much as I had hoped to find. I went back to the car and stripped, and then returned to the grove. I then untied the rope and lowered her body to the ground, where I stripped off her dress and pulled down her panties to around her ankles. I then draped her body over a crate that I had brought along for that purpose and fucked her up her asshole. I shot off almost at once and then felt very sorry for her. Oh, before I took her body down, I forced myself to lift up the pillowcase hood and look at her face. The face was swollen and a little mottled. The eyes were closed and swollen at the temples. Her mouth was open and her tongue was visible but not protruding very much. I was sick at the sight, but I left the hood off because of the blood, which I didn't like. After a few minutes, I got on her again and fucked her ass some more. It was still hot in there, and I shut off quickly once again. Then I stripped her out and threw her clothes into a pile. I then carried her body over to where I had rigged up a toilet seat between two crates, and I sat her limp body upon it. I then went down beneath the seat and stared up at her cunt and asshole, and fantasizing that she was in the act of shitting or pissing. After a while, I tired of this and left her body in the toilet seat and went back to the car where I slept. After a while, I went back to her and for the first time noticed that she was getting cold on the outside, but still warm on the inside when I fucked her asshole again. This time I left her nude body sprawled out on the ground with her ass sticking up in the air, sort of like she was kneeling. I went back to the car and went back to sleep, again feeling sick to my stomach. Later, I woke up again and got out and went to her and stuck my dick in her ass again. This time I noticed that not only was she getting cold, but it was also getting stiff too. I woke up cold and went to the car, leaving her laying on the pine needles after humping her hiney and then passing out over her dead nude body. The next time I woke up, it was nearing daylight, so I went and took her body, which was becoming stiff, down in the joints of her arms and legs, and dragged it over to the rope. I replaced the noose around her neck and hauled her up to see what she looked like in the gray daylight. She was too difficult to haul up very far, so I took her down and hauled her up on a lower limb where I could support her body as I was pulling it up. For the first time after removing her handcuffs, I noticed that her wrists were very bruised, most likely from where she tried to get out of her predicament just before she died. Earlier, I had lain beneath her and looked up her dress with a flashlight, but now, with her hanging there naked, she was not too stimulating. I went to the car and got a woman's slip and put it on her. Then, as she was suspended from the rope, I stood on a crate behind her and screwed her ass from behind, but it was hard to keep her still on the end of the rope because she was wanting to swing out. Her body was cold by this time, and it was exciting in another way, being able to fuck her cold corpse. I got off inside her ass once more, and then, since it was getting light, I took her down and wrapped her up in a white sheet and took her to the car. I dumped her body in the trunk and picked up her things and wadded them all up except her panties, pantyhose, and slip, which were soaked in her piss. I wanted to save these for souvenirs. I drove to another deserted spot and took her corpse out of the trunk, wrapped in the sheet. I half-dragged and carried it about a good 200 yards into the bush along a dike. She was very heavy now, and it was real work just to move her. When I got there, I decided I wanted to dump her corpse. I opened the sheet and rolled her out, now noticing that it was full daylight and that she was still wearing one earring and a gold chain. These I took and threw into a canal. Her clothes I also threw into another canal, and then I rolled her corpse down the side of the dike to a palmetto thicket. In the daylight, her corpse was very stiff and cold and grotesque. She had large bruises on her legs from where she probably kicked herself during her death throes. This, together with the distorted face and her bruised wrists, made her appear very unattractive. I propped her up as best I could and stuck it in her asshole again, and then turned her over. For the first time, I really noticed her auburn V covering her cunt. I forced her stiff legs apart as best I could and screwed face to face, which was not easy since she was very stiff and a little tight from the rigor mortis. I finally got my nuts off in her, and then I was exhausted for a while. I sat and then decided to dump her body in the canal. I pulled her body down to the water and pushed her in head first. Her auburn hair swam around as she began to slip beneath the hyanthus. Finally, the water came up over her butt and went into her asshole. I let her feet go, and she sank beneath the water. I went back to the execution site and cleaned up any traces of our having been there, and then went to a rock pit where I dumped her pocketbook and the sheet and a few rags and things. Then I went to Lum's and had lunch on her money, and didn't enjoy it very much. About 2 weeks later, I was curious to whether she floated to the surface. I was horrified when I went to see where she was dumped. I saw her body swollen and bloated, floating there. She was face down, and her hair was covering her shoulders. Her ass was sticking way up in the air, and I was looking right at what had been her cunt and asshole. The maggots had evidently been at work on her, because there was a big hole from her cunt to the top of the crack of her ass, and she stunk to high heaven. She was putrid with all the flies buzzing and landing on her too. I poked her with a stick, trying to get her down under the lilies, but ended up having to pile lilies upon her to hide her corpse, which was a funny reddish color. Another few weeks and she was out from under the lilies again, and I tried to sink her with a few blasts from a shotgun. I would almost puke when I got a whiff of her corpse. It was that bad. I would always go there and beat off toward her, just out of range of the smell. Eventually, she began to rot away, and every now and then, when I could stand the stink, I would drag her out and try to mash it with a stick. It seemed even the maggots didn't want to have anything to do with her at a certain point. Anyway, finally I managed to break up the body and make it sink. I took the skull and let the ants eat her brains out if she had any, and then I pulled out all the teeth and scattered them over the county. The lower jaw I buried. The rest of her skull, with the face smashed in and the teeth out, I put in another canal some 10 miles from the rest of her body. All in all, she's probably scattered over some 30 square miles, and I hope that she will continue to remain among the ranks of the missing, even though there is no possible connection between us. Also found in Schaefer's mother's home were 11 guns, bags filled with live and spent cartridges, 13 hunting knives, sections of rope, and scores of softcore porn magazines in which he had modified the women to depict them as urinating and bound by ropes and hanging from trees. 37 black and white Polaroid photos showed women being hung and mutilated in undergrowth areas in Florida. Some images had Schaefer himself dressed as a woman, simulating being hung with fecal matter smeared across his buttocks. A letter dated July 20th, 1971, from someone who lived in Brunswick East, Victoria, Australia, contained scores of Polaroid images of a massacre that he had encountered in his travels that depicted women who had been disemboweled and mutilated with knives and axes. Inside a jewelry box, investigators found personal items such as jewelry, passports, and clothing belonging to several teenage girls and young women. Barbara Ann Wilcox's driver's license and a passport belonging to Colette Marie Goodenough, who had been missing since January 1973, were found in this jewelry box. There were also teeth and scattered bones found on the property as well. These belonged to at least 8 victims. At Schaefer's actual home, 2 human teeth and several knives and firearms were found inside a utility shed. A blood-stained white pillowcase, which had been washed, was also found. Jessup's suede purse was also in the possession of Schaefer's wife that Schaefer had given to her that prior November. On May 18th of 1973, Schaefer was formally charged with first-degree murder for the killings of Place and Jessup. While being held before his trial, he was subjected to psychiatric examinations, and it was found that Schaefer suffered from paranoia, psychosis, and acute sexual deviation. He viewed himself as an eliminator of women who he deemed immoral, but overall, he was mentally competent to stand trial. Schaefer was sentenced to 2 concurrent terms of life imprisonment. Even at this point, Schaefer was still proclaiming innocence and that he should be sent to a psychiatric hospital as opposed to prison. On December 3rd, 1995, Schaefer was stabbed to death on the floor of his cell. He had been stabbed over 40 times about the face, neck, head, and body, with his throat also being slashed, his right eye destroyed, and several ribs fractured. His body was discovered after a fellow inmate informed staff of his death. A 32-year-old fellow inmate named Vincent Faustino Rivera had killed Schaefer following an argument over who received the final cut of hot water from a dispenser days prior to his murder. Rivera never admitted to it, though, and it is suspected that he was really killed because he was rumored to be an informant. Many people say that he finally got what he deserved. Jessup's mother was satisfied with the news of his death, saying she knew it would happen sooner or later. Gerard Schaefer was a sick man. He had dark obsessions and disgusting interests. He acted upon these obsessions many times. He wrote about them. He drew them out. He was a horrible man who tormented these girls before and after their deaths. He isn't as famous as Bundy or Gacy, but he is just as notorious, and perhaps even more deranged. People should know his story, and the story of these poor girls. Yet, he has faded into obscurity. For anybody to name their true crime articles or stories or whatever, Flies in Her Eyes, Horrors, What to Do About Them, and Blonde on a Stick.
They're pretty catchy.
They are catchy.
Pretty catchy.
I mean, it would draw your attention, you know?
Yeah.
Like, what the fuck? You know what I mean?
I mean, there's some crazier shit than that out there.
I'm sure, but I mean, if you're going through like Barnes and Noble, you know, some fucking
Flies on Her Eyes.
Flies on Her Eyes. What the fuck is that all about? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's in the kids section.
The new Dr. Seuss book, Flies on Her Eyes.
Oh my! There's flies in her eyes.
I do not want those flies on her eyes. so. I was gonna say some crazy shit, but I'll leave it at that. I hope she cried before her flies on her eyes.
Before the flies went in her eyes. Oh my. Is that a sty? No, it's a fly in her eye.
And then the whole time it's just like the Who, like the animated face of a dead fucking head.
with a fly buzzing around.
A fly buzzing around? Like, what kind of Dr. Seuss book is this?
Oh, man. Another thing I want to touch on is, like, Schaefer was, when he was growing up, you know, he wasn't really, you know, part of a clique. He wasn't popular, but, you know, people were, like, okay with him. But he was viewed as a outdoorsman, you know. As we talked about in the story, when he was 12, he would tie himself to a tree, and he would get sexually excited and do things to hurt himself.
At 12, that's pretty crazy.
That is fucking nuts, dude. When you actually put it into context.
But 12 is like, I remember, I mean, I saw my first porn when I was in 5th grade.
Your first porn?
My first porn was 5th grade. So, like, that's what I mean.
So, so 5th grade is like 11.
But then again, that's also, I was born in 1991.
Yeah.
Late 90s.
Dude, I was slaying back in 91.
I know, you were there.
I was slaying in 91.
I saw my first pair of tits on a fucking website back in the... No, but I'm just saying, like, we had unfiltered access to the internet,
right?
Too. So it was like I know what my kid's doing on their iPads. Like, I have history, like that kind of stuff. Like, or our parents didn't give a fuck. We had the family computer out in the living room. I've talked about it on this podcast a million times, but like our generation were the first ones that had like we saw shit way too young.
Yeah.
So it like So 9 like 12 it's a big jump. 9 to 12. I feel like years at that age is a huge jump in.
Now I want to like, this is going to bring up something totally opposite, and everybody listening at home, like I'm sure you're accustomed to us talking about one thing and then just like randomly going off on something fucking else. But here it is. Do you think we've become desensitized to like a lot of things?
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so hear me out.
Yeah.
I'm gonna bring up something that's not that nice.
Okay.
But I'm gonna bring up the shooting in Allen, Texas, for instance.
Yes, we were talking about this the other day. Yes.
Yeah. I saw the video from the guy who was there. It's gone. It's really hard to find now. It came out right.
It was everywhere.
Yeah, it was everywhere there. When he came in with the camera and he saw that little girl.
Yeah.
I don't know. She probably was 6, 7.
Yeah, and it was like 3 or 4 other bodies.
Yeah, with her head wigged open and stuff like that. It was insanely tough video to watch.
Yeah.
Coming from someone who watches gore videos and shit like that, I've done it since I was younger.
Yeah.
It doesn't affect me the same way that some, like, I feel like you said, I'm desensitized to it to a point, but I feel like the only way that people are going to really realize, like the older generation, who has been kind of seen lenses like through like a filtered lens with these news stories and these horrific things.
Yes,
I think they need to see that to understand like the grand scope of things. You know what I mean? Like, I think I think the younger generation has become desensitized 100%.
It's kind of like, you know, we've mentioned this like numerous times on this you know, podcast. You know, we talk about you know, we always bring up what's his name from Manson. You know, he was stabbed 54 times.
Yeah.
You know, we could talk about somebody being stabbed 54 times. We could talk about somebody being shot like, you know, 10 times. We could talk about all this other kind of stuff. And people are like, oh shit, wow, that's a lot. You know, but when you actually see what it looks like to be stabbed 54 times, it's fucking like gruesome. Yeah. You know what I mean? So I actually asked that at work because, you know, we were talking about that as well. You know, should we start showing things like that? You know, obviously we have an issue. Yeah.
But I honestly do think that these motherfuckers who are making these laws and trying to figure this out need to see this shit. Like, I think everybody's living through a lens like, oh, a mass murder, blah, blah, blah. No, go see the 5-year-old with their fucking head wigged open on the fucking ground, asshole. Right.
Now, Garrett and I, you know, we're both in agreement on this, is that something needs to change, you know, because everything that's going on, you know, nowadays is just fucking ridiculous. Now, do our lawmakers need to see these images? Do our vote, you know, people who are voting for, you know, whoever, do they need to see these images? Because, or do, like, again, do people, if we start showing victims of mass shootings, are they going to get desensitized?
As much as I'd like to say desensitized, and I don't mean to get political here. It's It's more of like you said, you hear a news article about a mass shooting or whatever, and then you're
like, oh my God, there's like 10 dead.
Oh, dude, 10 dead.
Yeah.
But like,
shit.
it's gotten, like, the headlines have gotten, we've had so many that it doesn't even, like, you're like, 10? That's not even that bad. Right. Like, at this point, that's how it is. That's like, literally, that's what I say. The Allen shooter, like, 9? Like, that, and that's horrible to say that.
Right.
The rest of the world, our overseas listeners are probably like, dude, what the fuck is going on?
Horrified.
Yeah.
And here in the U.S., we're like,
that's fine. And that's... So desensitized, here's my thing. Those videos that I watch, every time I watch a crazy gore video or I see like some fucked up shit, even though I'm desensitized to it, they stick with me.
Yeah.
They're still there. Like, I think anybody who understands, like, you can hear, like, if there's sounds or whatever, like, you can even hear the sounds in the video. I don't care what anybody who's gone down the dark side of the internet understands what I'm talking about.
No, I got you.
Yeah, you're desensitized to it. Yeah, you are okay with watching some pretty fucked up shit.
Yeah.
But it sticks with you. And I think a lot of these a lot of these tragedies need to stick with some people. So next time when they're having a discussion with their Uncle Johnny or whatever like this, you know what I mean? Maybe that's in the back of their head.
Right.
You know what I mean?
No, I got you.
How do we even get on this?
12-year-old watching porn.
Oh, yeah. It's kind of interesting to going back to being desensitized.
Yeah.
Because usually when you look back at these stories, these boys at a young age were exposed to something. Like being raped or being an older uncle that like showed them some fucked up shit or something like that. They usually have it. The fact that he was not watching porn, you don't have the easy access
in
of
1958.
Yeah, you're not watching
scrolling the internet,
watching bondage porn at 12. You know what I mean? Like we are nowadays.
Yeah, you have to actually physically fucking.
So where the fuck did this kink come from? Because you know what I mean? Usually that's that sexual awakening. Something happens in that age that kind of turns them into that's their thing.
Yeah, and it says
this guy just started getting rock hard when he tied himself up out of nowhere.
Yeah, and it says in a story that he had violent like self-loathing. You know what I mean? Like,
masochism's weird. He was a
masochist to himself.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, but that's a normal thing. Yeah. But to the sexual portion of it is kind of like. Usually you learn that somewhere. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's very interesting.
Yeah.
That out of nowhere, he just started tying himself up and realizing he was getting hard by it.
Yeah. And then he started fantasizing about doing it to women and,
slippery slope.
Yeah. He would choke it, like, he would choke himself out and fucking, like, get off on it.
Yeah, that's...
At that age.
So... Fun fact, somebody that we work with, I'm not going to say his name on the podcast.
Is? Okay. Oh, right.
No. It's not weird.
No, I'm going to guess.
He was an EMT. He was a paramedic for a long time, a fire department, EMT, paramedic. And he told me story, like, most of the deceased body, like, when I forgot what the code he called it, but they're showing up to a deceased body. Somebody found a deceased body.
Yeah.
A lot of them, more than you would think, were... people choking themselves out and masturbating and dying from it. Isn't that crazy? That's like a very good. And if anybody listening who's an EMT or knows EMT, ask them, because I guess that happens way more than you think.
Really?
That's like a very big kink.
Yeah.
Like suffocating yourself while you're just rubbing one out. So that doesn't surprise me. That's people are into some weird shit, man.
Yeah. Like when did that become a thing?
I don't know. I think you gotta try it.
What do you mean?
I don't know. You just gotta try. I've seen.
Hey, I'm down with that. I've tried.
No kink shaming here.
Listen, I have tried fucking pretty much everything.
But it's.
But I'm just wondering, like, where.
Who was the first pioneer in the?
Well, no. I mean,
in the belt around the neck masturbation.
Well, bro, I mean, when did the fucking lead singer from NXS die? He died from fucking choking himself out.
Oh yeah, he did, didn't he?
David, one of the Carradians, I forget which one it was. He fucking choked himself out. But I'm just saying, it's like when did it become mainstream? Now, like, I understand introducing like certain things to the bedroom and everything like that. But there's people nowadays, like it's common that people cannot have fucking sex or they cannot have enjoyable sex without being fucking abused, fucking gagged, choked, fucking slapped. you know, just fucking degraded while they're having sex.
Yeah, isn't that crazy?
What I mean?
I think that comes down to the ease of access of porn and us watching crazy shit.
Like porn has like corrupted.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Now
imagine if they had the ease of access in the 50s.
Yeah.
Where would we be at this point?
Right.
Like what if Gerard got his fix? But then again, what if he got his fix? Never started doing it.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
Porn could have saved Gerard.
It could have. He could. Yeah. Or just made it fucking worse. Because, like, you know, I was, my second marriage, I was together for 15 years, right? So, a lot fucking changed in 15 years. Now, like I said before, you know, I was experienced, and I did...
Well, you thought you were experienced.
Well, no, listen. I experienced, and I did experiment, you know, throughout that time, and with my first one. Let me tell you, back in the day, I was a fucking freak. But when you go back into the dating thing, it's like the expectation. You know what I mean? It's like before, you know, you break out of like a fucking, you know, a paddle or a fucking whip, or you fucking, you know, pinching fucking needles with clips and shit. Or you fucking, you know what I mean? Just something to like fucking spice it up in that fucking moment. Now it's like the fucking expectation. Like if you're not beating the fuck out of somebody while you're fucking them, it's like, oh, he fucking sucks in bed. Oh, he's horrible. Oh, he doesn't do it for me. You know?
She's just laying there, like, rolling her eyes.
Yeah. Are you going to punch me?
Are you going to punch me in the face? Yeah. It's getting a little wild out there.
You know what I'm talking about?
It's getting wild out there. I was married fairly young. I was 23 when I got married. Yeah. You know, with my wife now.
Go ahead. Tell your story. I'm going to grab a beer.
It makes me, like, wonder. I feel bad for people dating in their, like, late 30s. Because by then... everybody's been around the block for a while. I almost feel bad. I'm like, the expectation's probably wild at that point.
Fucking nuts, dude.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. So when I came out, I you know, I got divorced and everything, and I came out, and like if you weren't like, if that wasn't in your automatic repertoire, like you're fucking done for. You're finished. You didn't get like a fucking second, you know.
No callback.
Yeah, no callback.
He didn't spit in my mouth.
Right. Yeah, fucking fish hook them, you know, fucking spit in their mouth while you know what I mean? Smashing their face up against the fucking wall while you're railing them from behind, you know what I mean?
Jesus Christ, what kind of podcast is it turning into?
But I'm just saying, like that's like the dating world now.
Yeah.
Like you literally have to physically assault somebody.
You're pretty much doing the same thing that sparked serial killers in the 50s.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
At the end of the day.
Absolutely.
That's their wildest fantasies are just a normal Tinder date.
Right. It's a fucking Wednesday.
A regular Wednesday on Tinder. Crazy.
Oh, man. All right.
But hey, guys, good.
Yeah.
To all you out there on Tinder, good luck, baby.
Right.
Keep it up.
Yeah. Fucking bulk up.
You know, after listening to that story, I completely understand why you gave a warning to our listeners.
Bro, it's fucking... Yeah. Yeah, like I'm just gonna put this right here. I slipped my fingers beneath the rim of her panties down near the front of her cunt and moved them slowly back toward her asshole, fully expecting and hoping to find a nice pile of shit.
Ugh. And this is a dead body too.
Yes.
At this point. Oh yeah,
I'm like fucking.
Dave's getting the shivers right now.
My fingers found the hair of her ass an inch towards her hole. Like what the fuck? This is a dead body.
Yeah.
Like I don't even think my warning was sufficient enough.
Yeah. No.
For what we just fucking listened to.
Yeah. And you also I think you told me that story was you actually left his typos in the story. So
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So our Patreon members, when we send out the scripted story, they'll see exactly how
it was found in
his person, like the typos
on his
everything.
persons right. When the police picked him up.
Right. And I do have to give a shout out to Beth Davis because she's the one that brought this story to me, and she actually sent me his segment. Yeah. You know, his story.
Shout out to Beth.
Yeah, so as soon as I read the story when she sent it to me, I was like, what in the actual... Like, this is the most wild fucking, like, killer that we've done. And you know, and we can only assume...
It is kind of wild to just spread a dead body and just hope and pray that their excrement come out.
Oh, God.
Because, everybody Everybody knows.
Well, yeah, you lose all your bodily functions.
Yeah, eventually your gases just give out.
And he's just like sitting underneath her.
Staring up her skirt, which was another fantasy of him, waiting for this dead baddie to pass its final gases, dude. That's crazy.
There was a small mound of excrement littering the crotch of her panties and more clinging to the area around her asshole, but there was not nearly as much as I hoped to find.
I don't even know what to say to that.
What?
I don't even know what to say.
Fuck, dude.
I don't even know what to say.
Like, we can just, like...
This is a fucking cool guy, dude.
We can just go through...
Cool guy.
Ugh. We can just go through and just fucking, like, just pull out fucking snippets, like, all over the place. Like, and every...
The best part is...
What the fuck?
His writing isn't even good. Like, he's not even telling a good story. He's literally just telling about, like
the whole fucking toilet seat. Like you just said. Like, who thinks of this?
I got bored. I went back to... He said I got bored. I went back to the car.
Yeah. Oh, my God.
Crazy. Like, no words. No words.
No.
This... A true sicko.
Like, you know, we always talk about, you know, Garrett and I, you know, when we do episodes, you know, when we go into like the whole discussion part of everything like that, you know, like we try not to force, you know, too much, you know, force information or force, you know, us talking or force anything. And, you know, we always abide by, you know, let the story speak for itself. And I'm fucking speechless on this one. To be perfectly honest, I don't know what else to say.
Yeah,
I don't.
Let the story speak for itself.
Yeah, and so with that being said, I mean, take what you just fucking listened to. I don't know what you're gonna do with it. I don't even know what I'm going to do with it. Like, this story by far just blows every other fucking story out, and we don't have to add anything to it. We don't have to fucking butter it up. We don't have to make it more glorified.
Just read the handwritten letter in his fucking pocket. We don't have
to fucking do anything. Read his fucking story, and it just fucking just like ends it right there. So with that being said, if you liked what you heard...
what a great ending! I love it!
Go to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts, and leave us a review. And don't forget, you can become one of the debauched by joining our Patreon for as little as $2 a month for general support. Everyone gets ad-free episodes and access to our Discord channel. Hot.
Through the roof.
It's hot. Yes, through the roof. Those who join the $5... I have no fucking idea what that is. Those who join the $5 tier or above get all of our Audible... This fucking story fucked me up. Get all of our Audible video and downloadable content, including narrated scripts from every story, 5-Minute Murder, our Patreon only, Not Safe for Work, bi-weekly podcast, Random AF. For the higher tiers, you can get all of this plus producer credits on every episode and goodies thrown in like t-shirts, posters, coffee mugs, etc. Just go to criminalafpodcast.com/support to choose your tier. Links to our support, socials, merchandise, reviews, and more are in the episode description. Garrett, do you want to sign us off?
And signing off from Studio Chloroform. Keep your head on a swivel. Until next time.
Now give me our theme music. See ya. Executive producers for this episode are Christine Rivera, Beth Davis, Dusty J. Hicks, and Terri Burke-Wolin. Associate producers are Paul Hodge, Tara Mazur, Shantal Daggett, Jay from Fright Flick FMK, Cherise Webb, Kori Cribbs, Donny Blake, and Jared Rhodes. Producers are J.D., Trent Gobble, Devin Dean, Ashlee O'Connor, Lissa Porrello, Alicia Knight, Maria Celine, Chris Owen, Not That Chad, Emily White, Ian Turner, Emily Dickendasher, Debbie from True Crime University, Jeanette LeBlanc, and Renee Prada. Intro and outro music by David Mercurio. Be sure to follow Criminal AF on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, X, and YouTube. Check out all of our merch and many other items at debaucheddesigns.com.